I'm glad to be here. As earlier I said, my name is Becky R., and today I am going to be talking to you about spiritual activism. Spiritual activism has a lot of different definitions, and generally it's defined as an intentional desire to create positive change on a social or political issue, working from a grounded, centered, and balanced place. Now, there's a lot of talk right now. It's kind of a buzzword, activism, but then you see protests, and that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about being peaceful and non-reactive. So it's an active thing, not a reactive thing, right? It's meaning that you're not telling the other person's side is wrong, or or you're not being defensive. You're not being enraged or angry by what's going on, but you have a deep desire to connect and improve something. Now, this is really interesting because I had this talk written. It's been a couple weeks now, and I'm in the ministerial program, trying to become on the ministerial path. I'm a student. When I grow up, I'm going to be like Linda. But I'm in this one class, and it's really interesting because I've been watching these videos by Peter Steinecke, and he was a Lutheran minister, and he did a lot of interventions on churches trying to help them. And he has this key information, and it's kind of a global thing about their mission. But as I'm sitting here thinking, it really applies to activism. Because what he's trying to say in all of this is if you keep doing the same things, you're going to keep getting the same results. So if something, for instance, he goes to these big churches, and these big churches are, people are stop coming, and they go do other things instead. Well, they're on this roll to get there. Well, but they're still doing the same thing. They're not changing what they do in order to get a different reaction. So this is kind of what activism sounds like to me. So the Satyan Leading and Spirit program says there are key learnings, so like a framework for activism, okay? And it's transforming anger, fear, and despair into compassion, love, and purpose. It's finding a way to change that defensiveness into openness, right? And this is a vital challenge for today's social change movement. It's not about denying anger. It's not about saying you can't be angry. It's about what you do with it. It's the shift from fighting against evil to working for love. It's that, I can't even remember, it was a counseling thing years ago. Somebody told me, are you running from something or towards something? It's all in the mindset, right? So a positive future cannot emerge from the mind of anger and despair. The Dalai Lama said that. In order to have a positive future, it can't come from that anger and despair. So another part of the key framework is non-attachment to the outcome. And this is hard because we want it to go our way. But how do we know what our way is? And in some cases, activism starts, like what MLK in the 60s. He started this big chain of things going on that are still going on that I hadn't even no idea because I was just a child in the 60s until I took a class on the 1960s and thought, wow, all that was happening while I was a kid and I didn't know, but this activism movement, and here we are still working towards that change. So he only planted seeds. He didn't get to live long enough to see what the changes would be and what the future changes will be. So it's difficult to practice this, but if we hold a clear intention and we let go of the outcome, we recognize that there is a larger wisdom operating here, right? Gandhi says the victory is in the doing, not the results. So if we remain flexible in the face of the changing circumstances, right? So we think we're headed down a path, and then there might be a turn that we have to go to, and then that might be it. And then COVID happens, and then look, now we're shifting again, right? So this activism, spiritual activism, is about staying in that connection. Another key part of the framework is your integrity, and it is your protection. It is our protection to have integrity. One of the key principles for me here is if I never tell a lie, if I'm always in my integrity, I don't have to remember anything because I'll always have the same thing to say the next time, right? So being in your integrity is if you work if your work has integrity, this will tend to protect you from the negative energy in the circumstances, right? So you can often sidestep the negative energy from others by becoming transparent. This is me, this is who I am, and that doesn't land on me, right? They call it a spiritual Aikido. My husband practices Aikido, and it's about moving the energy past you and not holding on to it, right? Another key for the framework is you demonstrate, you don't demonize your adversaries. We don't have to call names. We don't have to say they're this race or they're that kind of a person, or they, we don't have to make demons out of them in order to practice spiritual activism. It makes them more defensive and less receptive if we demonize them, if we call them names, if we come from that defensiveness. People respond to arrogance with their own arrogance, and I've seen this time and time again. Some people just respond to arrogance in general, but the more arrogant I would become, the more they would become. So be a perpetual learner and constantly challenge ourselves on our views. Listen to other people. I saw another video the other day, which was really interesting. They took people that were on opposing sides of issues. And one was a feminist and one was a hardcore, all what the feminists do and talking about all the things that they did. And they videotaped these people. And then they put them in this room together all day doing things, but they didn't know anything about each other. They didn't know what they had said on the videotape. They had been told that they were just teamed with somebody that thought like they did. So they sat down and started doing all these things and working all these things out and went through the whole day building things and enjoying each other's company and learning about each other. And then at the end, they got to see the initial videotape that their stand on a particular issue. Whereas the man saw the woman's talk about feminists, and then the woman saw the man's talk about feminists. And they looked at each other like, you really believe that? And because they had taken the time to get to know each other, they realized that they could soften their view. They didn't have to put those feet down and stand in that, right? So demonizing them didn't help. Let's make them human. We're all unique, and we find and fulfill our true callings, right? It's better to tread your own path, however humbly, than that of another, however successfully. So find what's yours to do. And this is hard because there's a lot out there to be an activist about. There's a lot going on right now. This is 2020, guys. We're going to remember this for a long time. This is going down in the history books right now, just in case you're wondering. They're writing the history of now for our future. So there's a lot to be working with. So pick your path, right? Love your enemy, or at least have compassion for him. This is a big lesson. This is one I learned this year really close to home, because some stuff come out from my family of origin, and I wouldn't say confronted, but I was asked what was going on, and I was transparent and honest, and I shared some things that had never been said out loud before, and they were like, well, don't you hate this person? And I'm like, no, I don't hate them. Why would I hate them? They did the best that they could with what they had. And I only hope that they heal. I hope that they find love. And I hope that this person in particular heals their life. Because I know what it's like to come up from that hole. I know what that's like. And there's no reason to be hard on the issues. There's no reason to be hard on the people. The issue is a different thing. Being an activist for the issue is different than being hard on the person. So your works in this world is not for you, right? In doing the service work, you are working for others. We are working. The full harvest of our work, like I said earlier, may not even take place in our lifetime. And my very first sponsor said, I'm just planting seeds. And some of them grew faster than others, just like a garden, right? So let your fulfillment come in gratitude for being called to do the work. and from doing it with as much compassion, authenticity, fortitude, and forgiveness that we can muster. Forgiveness is a big key. So selfless service is a myth, and I love this one as one of the frameworks, because I'm thinking when I was out for 5 years, I was a lead house leader for Habitat for Humanity. We built houses. And I thought, I'm doing this for them. And I learned so much when I was doing that. Leading a team of people. I was leading the team that led the volunteers. And there's a lot going on in those steps. Yes, I had some skills that maybe some people didn't have. But you learn a lot by doing this. And shielding ourselves from heartbreak also prevents our transformation. If we want to do the work, but we don't want to feel it, we're not really getting the whole part of what's going on. And Gandhi says he understood the principles that a broken heart becomes an open heart, and a genuine transformation can begin. The next key principle is what you attend to, you become. The more we know this with New Thought, and I've learned this, I've been in this for a while, and with 12 Steps, everything that we've learned is the more we concentrate on something, the more we become that. The more time we spend on it, the more we transform it. It can be negative or it can be positive. For me, I choose for it to be positive. Not everybody makes that choice. But it is whatever you spend your focus on, that's where you will grow to become that. So you reap what you sow, you choose your actions carefully, and we constantly engage in battles. If we constantly engage in battles, we will become a battlefield. That's just how it is. So if you constantly give love, then we'll be love. Another one of the key frameworks is to rely on faith and let go of having to figure it all out. Because it's not all ours. There's a divine force working here. There's something bigger than ourselves, and we're only a part of this. We're not all of it. One of the key steps for this, they say, is the first step is wisdom is silence. So many people have a hard time sitting in silence. And I did too, for years. I had a hard time with silence, and I would, even going into a meeting, if it was quiet for too long, I had to speak out. Even if I had already spoke out, it was, it was uncomfortable. But if we can center ourselves in that silence, we start to hear different things, and we'll listen in a different way. And we become, the way that we begin to listen, we can hear at a whole nother level. Another key framework is that love creates the form, not the other way around. Don't get trapped by pessimism concerned about human nature that is not balanced by optimism concerned by divine nature, or you'll overlook the cure of grace. It's not one way or another. That was Martin Luther King. It's not one way or another. Let your heart loves infuse your work, and you can't fail. It's just, once you're infused with it. Through your dreams, though your dreams may manifest in ways different from what you imagine. But there are keys to spiritual activism, okay? And the first one is that it must be based on compassion. That's the same thing that Patricia was talking about in meditation. Spiritual activism is about compassion. Compassion for yourself, compassion for the system, and compassion for the change and the people involved in it. Because it's a wholeness, it's a holistic approach to this, right? Mother Teresa said, in a response to a question about why she didn't attend anti-war rallies, she said, when you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. It wasn't anti-something, it was pro-something else, okay? Another one is compassion flows from the understanding of connection between all the living things. That's what I was talking about. We're all a part of the greater, okay? So it's us, it's when it becomes us or we instead of them and you know what I mean? When it becomes we. There was a conversation I had with my dad early this year, and he kept saying, they, and he was pointing out, and then I kept saying, it's we, Dad, it's we. You know, sometimes people can get stuck in their honoriness, but it is we. When we become a part of the system, we can change it. Compassion must be applied with wisdom. That's what Tricia was talking about. Just compassion itself is compassion, it's empathy, it's wonderful, but the wise compassion, there are more causes that exist than individuals can fix. So do what we can, right? That's true wisdom to know how to alter one's mind when the occasion demands it. Another one is apply synergy and teamwork, right? I know my strengths. Someone else might find another strength. The other person has a strength. Let's use all of our strengths in the synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Spiritual activism is a pursuit of service for all, the good of all, not for the advancement or benefit of individuals or selected communities. The mindset behind your spiritual action must be noble, holistic, universal, and nonpartisan. Being mindful that our ego and our self-service have no place in spiritual activism. Another one is pursue integrity. This is back to it. Being transparent, honesty and dignity, and conduct in our own actions. Embrace mindfulness in the application of your activities and be aware of how your activities may be perceived by others. Right? Integrity is doing the right thing even if you know nobody's watching. That's hard to do sometimes. You know, nobody's watching. Who saw me do it? Well, I did. And that's something we practice in the 12 steps. I know I did it. So I have to accept responsibility for it. That's when I live in integrity. Another one is do not defame the people that doubt you, right? That's, again, the calling the names, the making them the demons, the making them the bad. Right? So aspire to always be a peacemaker. That's how spiritual activism works. Raising another one up, you as well, helping another one becomes a form of self-love as well as expressing the outward love. This becomes an upward spiral cycle, increasing awareness, connection, compassion, involvement, capacity. You are the lead. When we are the leaders and they see us being compassionate and having integrity, they will follow suit. I've seen it happen. And learn to listen with your heart and not your mind. So many of us want to listen with, because we're bombarded with noise and we want to listen to what's going on up here. And if we can bring it down into our heart, Reverend Alice always used to say, it's only a foot from the head to the heart. And sometimes it's the hardest 12 inches that people travel. Learn to act with faith and cultivate a loving perception when facing collective problems. Search out valuable and sustainable solutions. It's not just about giving the person the fish, right? It's about teaching people to fish. It's about finding a way that the system works in the steps so that it's sustainable as well. Because if we just pass out money checks and say, here, your life will be better if you have money and you can go live here, the mindset hasn't changed. The reality hasn't changed. That's how come they say lottery winners that come into all that money just lose it all within years, and then they're battling bankruptcies because their mindset didn't change, just the situation around it. The goal of spiritual activism is to raise another up, not make them dependent. One of my teachers way back when said, foster independence. I love that, and I think about it all the time. We want to foster independence, especially since I'm raising grandkids. It's important that they're not dependent on me. That's why they all know how to cook, and they all know how to do their own laundry, and they all know how to clean the house, because they need that independence. They will someday use those tools. And don't judge ourselves simply by the results of our actions. If we've been trying to get things done and think we're failing because we're not getting anywhere, we're judging ourselves. We really need to have some self-compassion. The ultimate goal is to unconditionally raise the understanding and the support of humanity with no exceptions. There's a real fulfillment in just being called to serve humanitarian and spiritual causes. Sometimes it's just not, it's not about getting to the end. It's about the movement, the action. That's why they call it activism. And the last one they said on this one is the meta, in being in the motivation of your actions. Now the meta, if you don't know, is the practice of loving kindness, and that's for everybody. And yourself and everybody. Being in loving kindness. Start from a position of pure and altruistic love. So how can you help in the community? What are ways? You got a busy life. Everybody's got a busy life. And, I've got more packed into my day than a lot of people, but I still want to make a difference in the world. Like I said, raising 5 grandkids, and you start thinking about all these things and what kind of world we're leaving them, then I need to take spiritual activism a step further. So people see on the news activism as protests. That they see all the hurt that of course, the media is an assistance in that. And that's a whole nother talk. But how can we be spiritual activists in maybe a simpler way? We can educate ourselves and others. We find out what the policy is, what's going on out in the community, and not hide in a shell, right? We can advocate for legislation. We can run for office. I don't know that that's something that I want to do, but somebody might want to run for office if they want to make a change. That office could be at the school level, at the district level, state, government, you name it, right? We can peacefully protest. We can also create a public awareness campaign using social media. I love the social media thing. So we can do a survey about the issues and share the results. We all have our own social media things. What if we did a survey? What if we asked our friends, what do you think that's going on, and where do you think that we could step in? How can we change our personal mission, right? Or we can raise money for some kind of activism campaign that's going on. Maybe it needs a little bit more publicity. Maybe it needs some ads going on. Maybe it needs a billboard. We could help raise some money for that. We could write a letter. Make a phone call, send an email to the legislature. I don't know how many times I've sent emails to congressmen or congresswomen and said, hey, wait, what are you looking at here? Bombard them with emails, because for every letter they get, they're figuring we're representing at least 100 people. So if they're getting that letter, they know 100 people are not happy about that. So we can engage in community service. You want your community to look better? Maybe pick up the trash. That's spiritual activism, right? We can get the press involved. You can write to the local press. I've done it. Send them little things, to print immediately. They'll do that, or get a crew out there. If it's something really you want to talk about, call them up and say, hey, we've got something going on down here. Maybe they'll have time to come out. Maybe they'll run it. Maybe they won't. We'll see. That's the media. But you can call them. We can call them, right? Or another big one right now is we can start a blog or a virtual community, a meetup group, something that says we're here, we're listening, and we want to make a difference in the world, right? So the call to be a spiritual activist is a deeply personal one. With all of this information, there are only 2 questions I have left, right? I always have to ask you questions. What cause calls you to become a peaceful spiritual activist? What call is calling you? Right now, or was calling you? What is calling you? And in what way will you help this cause in your community?